Welcome to the Week 3 edition of the Weekly Supplement, coming to you from our studio in a garage on Fraser Avenue. This week's games are chock full of surprises. Before we get to this week's action, we at the Weekly Supplement have some apologies to make. First, Happy O'Day has been suspended for at least a week. We have listened to our viewers and his remarks about my mother were quite simply unacceptable. And secondly, Happy also made some off-handed comments about the Lucky Stiffs not turning in a game sheet. After a detailed investigation, it was discovered that there is a simple miscommunication on the drop-off location. Again, the Weekly Supplement takes full responsibility for the immature actions of one staff member, and we will do our best to see that it doesn't happen again. Now, I'm Hawkeye the sports guy and I'm ready to review some games.
And I'm mostly indifferent about sports.
So nice to have another warm welcome. What is it about English accents? Well, the early game on Monday was a terrific match. The undefeated Lucky Stiffs versus the 1-1 Grizzlies. The game saw stellar defense on both sides, but the Stiffs scored 4 early runs and earned a 7-2 victory. Jens Lapa led the way, going with 4 hits and a run scored. For the Grizzlies, Dave Argue was 3 for 3 and Bobby Smith went yard on the Dean. Frank Laird.
The late game on Monday featured last year's regular season champs, the Hurting Units, against the young upstart Beer Brothers. The Beer Brothers scored 15 runs, which is enough to win on most nights. But this wasn't most nights. The Hurting Units scored 22 and only needed 6 innings. Chris Larkin led the way for the Units with 4 hits and 4 runs scored. Paul Giori, Cole Russell and Kevin Moon all scored 3 runs in the victory. For the losers.
Excuse me. We don't say losers.
Apologies. For the team that failed to be victorious, Captain Paul, Dennis Short, Mark Colson, John Barlow and Cordell the rookie all had 4 hits.
Moving to Tuesday. The Rusty Rebels faced off against the Torn Ligaments. There seems to be a real trend toward defense this year, and this game was a perfect example. This game 7 scoreless half innings and only 1 half inning that saw more than 1 run scored. On a night where there were not many offensive stars, Stefan Kapp, Donnie Booth and Mark Bickford were all 3 for 3 for the Rebels. The Ligaments, after getting shut out for the first 5 innings, scored 6 in the 6th and 1 in the 7th to seal the win.
The other early game on Tuesday was the Dislocated Jointies and the Dodge City Rounders. The Joints went off in this game, scoring 4 in the first and another 4 in the second on those to 20 runs scored overall. Dawnswood Buck was 6 for 6 with 4 runs scored in the victory. For the Rounders, last year's finalists, Tito was 3 for 3. The Rounders sit at 0-3 and the Joints at 1-2.
Moving to the 8:15 games on Tuesday, the Hot Tub Woodies and Dog Catchers game was postponed due to worsening field conditions at Coventry 3. In speaking to the scheduling coordinator, the game should be rebooked about 3 weeks out from now.
On Coventry 2, which was in much better shape, the Wild locked horns with the Dusty Cleats. The Wild clung to a 1-0 lead after 2 innings, but then it unravelled. The Cleats won going away, 13-6. The Wild had a number of subs and were missing Francis Walsh. Trying to win without Francis is no easy task. You should probably get used to hearing a lot about the Dusty Cleats. And about Rob McCarron. So far this year, Rob is hitting an unworldly .933 with 12 runs scored. He's scoring more often than Arnold Schwarzenegger.
At 9:30 on Tuesday, the Banshees and the Grizzlies played their make-up game of an earlier rainout. The teams went back and forth on a cold, wet night, but ultimately the Banshees held on for a 13-10 win. Scott Peters and John Koopman both scored 3 runs in the win. For the Grizzlies, Jimmy the Hunter, Rob Hayward and Dave Argue all had 4 hits and 4 at-bats. A great night for those 3, but sadly, not too much production around them. The Banshees improved to 1-1 and 1 while the Grizzlies fell to 1-3.
On Wednesday, the Banshees played their second game of the week against the undefeated Lucky Stiffs. Frank's crew was severely understaffed for this game and it showed. Only Anisette had more than a single hit for the Banshees. For the Stiffs, the big kahuna was 4 for 4 again. He also scored another 2 runs, giving him 8 for the year. However, that is still 3 behind Jerry Wallace's 11. Losing 11-1 isn't a lot of fun. But at least Frank got to strike out John Stiff. The Banshees fall to 1-2-1 and the Stiffs are now 4-0.
The Beer Brothers and Dislocated Joints met up late on Wednesday and the Beer Brothers won an offensive showcase by the score of 18-10. There were plenty of stars on both sides on this one, but the Pendleberries combined for 8 hits and 3 runs. Meanwhile, super rookie Cordell Nippard had 4 hits and 3 runs. Dennis Short, Paul Palush and Mark Doyle also scored 3 runs. The Beer Brothers finished the week at 2-1. Anti-Dislocated Joints are in a group at 1-3.
Thursday finally saw the weather improve and with it another defensive game. The Red Dogs fell to the torn ligaments 9-6. Fraser Barrett had a nice 4-hit night for the ligaments and Cam Clark had 3 hits and 2 runs scored, as did Steve Winnick. Bob Blago, the worst-kept secret in the league, had 3 hits and 2 runs scored, and Billy Clouchet chipped in with 3 hits as well. The Red Dogs are not 1-3 and the ligaments continue to impress, moving to a strong 3-1.
The Dog Catchers and Blue Jays game was epic. The Dog Catchers scored 2 in the first, and 3 in the second. The Blue Jays scored 3 in the first and were the shutout in the second, third, fourth, fifth and sixth innings. Going into the 7th inning, the Dog Catchers had a 10-3 lead and looked home and cooled out. The Blue Jays came up in the bottom of the 7th trailing by 7 runs and had the first 5 players reach base. The next 2 batters made outs before 6 more straight hits completed the comeback. The Dog Catchers fell to 0-2 and the Blue Jays finished the week at 2-1.
The final game of the week was a make game between the Wild and the Dodge City Rounders. Unfortunately, that game was concluded too late to be included and we'll carry it over to next week's update.
Well, thanks for joining me today. You did pretty well.
Thanks. I hope Happy O'Day is back next week.
What are you doing after the show?
Please. I'd rather stick needles in my eyes.